appreciate you're all here. We're taking up 2 bills today to move on to other destinations. And we're going to hear some really interesting testimony about substance abuse and some proposed ideas. Next Tuesday, we're taking up 4 bills. And Thursday, we're taking up the governor's budget. And so I'm interested to see what that looks like. So with all that, the meeting is called to order. Senator Draheim, you're up. And I think Senator Utke was keenly interested in your bill and would like to move Senate File 35 to be before us. So.
I will make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And there's also a delete all amendment, and Senator Utke will move the A4 amendment. And so I'd like actually, since when delete alls come, that we just discuss what they're about. So Senator Draheim, if you would just now speak to the amendment that's before us. And we heard this last year, I think, and some bills are just so good you want to hear them year after year. And so welcome to the best of day. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Abler. I know you have a busy schedule, and thank you for squeezing me in. This duplicate number issue has been going on for 15, 16, 17 years. We did some work back in 19 on it, and this kind of builds on that. And when council was reviewing what we had, they wanted to eliminate pretty much the first paragraph that talked about this calendar year. And I don't know if council wants to speak to that. I see he's on. Chair, if that's okay with you, if he could real quick.
Well, and Senator Draheim, why don't you speak to the whole idea of the bill? It's just about duplicate numbers. Do you want to say more than that, or is that?
Yeah, and I know most of you are familiar with it, but I know we have a couple new members here. So we give an ID number to everybody that goes on the state-run insurance, health insurance, and that creates problems. It's expensive, obviously. The percentage of numbers that are duplicate. The agency has one. The plans tell me something quite a bit higher. But anyway, it's wasting state dollars that we need for other programs, which I think you're going to talk about later today. And then the plans are kind of graded, or they're judged on other things that go on how many people are on the plan. So if for getting your shots, et cetera. So if the numbers are way off, that affects more than just having duplicate numbers and costing the state money. So it's something I've worked on for at least 3 or 4 years, and this is just the next step in that. So Chair, is there any other questions or anything else you think I should point out?
Well, that's fine. Mr. Hauswald, do you just want to, I think the amendment that's been brought forward is sort of technical. It just makes it prospective instead of retro. Mr. Hauswald.
Mr. Chair, members, that's right. As we reviewed the language, the enacting law that requires the department to correct this identification number issue set a deadline of June 30th, 2021, which is the end of fiscal year 21. And the introduced language would have permitted penalties to be imposed during fiscal year 2021 when the enacting law permitted the department to complete the process by the end of fiscal year 2021. So it eliminates the overlap of that enforcement with the permitted timeline for implementing the program.
Well, thank you. And Senator Draheim, I noticed is that a penalty that you have for the 2 different years? Is that, and so does that go to the Draheim Foundation, or does that just go to the bottom line?
It goes to the bottom line, or for other Draheim bills.
Oh yeah, it creates a budget. That's very clever. I think the audience here thinks this is amazing. What a way to fund your other projects. So members, this man's become a master in his years in the Senate. So Mr. Anderson, maybe we'll hear from you, and then we'll take a member question. So welcome, Mr. Matt Anderson. Are you here?
Yes, I am, sir.
Oh, there you are.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Matt Anderson. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Healthcare and State Medicaid Director at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and certainly thank Senator Draheim for his attention to this issue over the years. He's correct that this is a very important issue and one where the more that we can reduce duplicate member IDs, the more money we save, but also the better service that we provide to our enrollees. Department of Human Services takes this issue very seriously, and we've committed to pursuing improvements and safeguards. Those we've already identified and planned, and we've provided the legislature with a report last September on our progress, as well as many that we discover as we move through our disciplined and ongoing continuous improvement initiative in this area. We've made great strides in improvements already, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share some of those highlights with you. I especially want to thank our partners at Minute, who have been with us every step of the way, and my colleagues at DHS who've been diligently and methodically identifying improvements, implementing safeguards, looking for ways to make our systems better, and decrease both the likelihood of multiple PMIs or IDs being generated in the first place, and at the same time, the chances of overpayments being made. So we've implemented new processes in our payment systems, even since the report in September, to be able to actively prevent overpayments that would be due to multiple IDs before they occur, as a significant improvement and risk mitigation step. It doesn't necessarily prevent the multiple IDs from being generated, but it radically decreases the consequences, particularly the financial consequences. So we generate monthly reports that identify potential duplicates and within our current enrollee population, and then take action to either confirm whether that duplicate is actually a duplicate, and if so, to take remedial action to fix those situations before payments are made. Most occurrences of multiple IDs therefore most occurrences of multiple IDs no longer affect payments. But they can still have human impacts for our enrollees, and especially around access to care. So this process also helps us mitigate those issues. So the biggest concern we have is when our enrollees, eligible enrollees in our programs, would have interruptions or delays of care because multiple IDs create confusion in the system. And so our number one focus is to try to make sure that, especially during a pandemic, our enrollees are able to get the care services that they need. And so by identifying these potential multiple IDs and remedying them proactively, we're able to prevent those interruptions in care. And so that's a significant improvement. We are still, of course, working to try to fix our systems to prevent the creation of new multiple IDs. Again, the report identifies many of the steps and projects that we've already put in place or have underway. And again, with great help from our colleagues at Minute in being able to help improve those systems. I want to be clear that we have chances of multiple IDs being created both in our legacy system called Maxis, but more so in the higher risk in the new system, the Minnesota Eligibility Technology System, or METS. The biggest difference for this is the Maxis, the legacy system, a worker, state worker, county worker, or tribal worker is working directly with the applicant and therefore is able to better ensure that there aren't duplicate IDs in that application process. There can still be times when a duplicate ID in Maxis is generated, and that may be because the worker can't match the applicant to an existing record because they have limited data, or there's been substantial changes to the data, change in name, for example, or they just fail to thoroughly research the system to see if an ID already exists, makes a mistake that way, or they can also enter a typo. Obviously, it's human error. But the MET system has much more opportunity for duplicate IDs to be generated, because in the MET system, what we've allowed is for applicants, for our Minnesota residents, to directly enter their own information and submit their own applications. And so without the worker-aided process, you have much higher likelihood that applicants are going to make mistakes or not complete information or otherwise fill out the application in a way that we would be able to identify and correct for that. This is naturally much more convenient for our residents, allows them more autonomy and privacy, but it also creates more opportunities for errors. Another significant issue we have is churn in our programs as enrollees fall off our program and then come back on the program, failure to complete the renewal information, what have you, or they're right on the edge of our eligibility limits and they have changes in their circumstances. All of that creates a new application, and that every time you have a new application, you have a risk of generating a multiple ID if it's not matched up with their previous enrollment. Another factor that we have that is one that we have to recognize and acknowledge is that we also want to make sure that we are protecting our enrollees' data and their own personal health information. So if we have a potential for a duplicate ID, we can't have our system set up to automatically send the information back to the enrollee and say, wait, aren't you already enrolled? Because we might actually be disclosing somebody else's protected health information. And so we can't have that kind of double check in the system and be able to maintain the privacy. So as I said in the report, many of the upgrades and system improvements have already been completed or in progress. Again, the most significant one that we didn't even have as part of our original plan was the changes in our payment systems to be able to mitigate the risks of inappropriate or overpayments being made. And refer you to that report if you want more details on that. But we have more fixes and more updates and system improvements that are coming. We always have updates in the software that's designed to try to use algorithms and analytics to be able to identify common names and identification information. And so we want to be able to continue to implement those improvements as they come. So one of the points that I want to make in the time that we have today is that we have a solid corrective action plan in place, and we are confident that we are going to have those projects completed by June 30th, with a couple of exceptions, and those being things that we want to be able to have more testing and improvements on the back end, as well as one of the projects that just simply is going to take longer to be able to complete. But that we don't consider this to be something that's done by June 30th. This is an ongoing continuous improvement project. And as we identify other weaknesses or gaps in our system, as we identify other ways that we can reduce the number of duplicate IDs, we're going to keep moving on those improvements beyond June 30th if that's what it takes. Again, as Senator Draheim noted, this has financial savings, but even more importantly, it has better care and access to care for our enrollees, the better that we're able to do this. With that, I'm happy to stand for questions and provide other information if there's things that we can offer that would be helpful.
Members, just to help with the breadth of questions, this is going to get sent to the other health committee. And we were discussing if it even belonged here, but it seems to me, Mr. Anderson, that there's the part if they have two numbers, if you give Blue Cross two numbers for people, they're going to charge you for two people, even if one never gets used. And so we pay a capitated rate. But it seems if a person had two numbers, there's a chance that someone could use both those for SNAP programs or other programs, economic supports or something. I believe that's probably correct. Is that right, Mr. Anderson?
Mr. Chair, you're correct. Every program, both within Medicaid as well as other health insurance companies, not unique to Medicaid, not unique to Minnesota, that if you have multiple ideas, you have that risk. Correct.
All right. Well, and so it's good it's here. And so anyway, questions from members? I don't really see any, but I think it's a worthy thing, and I think this is the Matt Dean Memorial legislation piece. And so if he's watching, they're still working on it. And it's going to be fixed so well. They have another person named Matt who's at the head of at the switch. So Senator Draheim, if you want to offer your final comments, we'll send you on your way to another committee. Oh, Wickland, Senator Wickland. I'm sorry, I should put my hand thing up here. Senator Wickland, you're
Yeah,
up.
sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just wanted to raise a concern about this. I was wondering if it was going to go to Senator Benson's committee. It seemed like it would be something, because I think we discussed it in her committee in last year or the year before. I guess I have concerns about imposing a penalty when their corrective action plan shows a lot of robust work has been going on. And as Mr. Anderson mentioned, the continuous improvement processes within the department have been greatly enhanced over the last year. I think overall we had a presentation in Senator Benson's committee that was more detailed on that work that had been going on within DHS. And despite, I looked at the report that came out, and all of the things that are either in progress or completed seem to be showing a great sign of substantial effort towards reducing this and minimizing and, hopefully coming to a complete reduction of all of these duplicates, which seems like a longer term process. But it seems like they are fulfilling the requirements under law. And I don't see that imposing a penalty after that work has gone on later this year to start imposing a penalty because they haven't reached the goal would serve a productive purpose. And I think that the pandemic has also affected Medicaid programs and some of the requirements that we have to follow because of the federal guidance given to the state. It seems like there is a lot of work going on that will have to be done to come out of those requirements, when the public health emergency ends. So I think that there's going to be a lot of effort, and it doesn't serve a productive purpose to reduce funds from their budget. So I'm not supportive of it at this point. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I think that's very thoughtful, and I think that the point of the bill is that we really care about this. And so, Senator Wickton, maybe you want to talk to Senator Draheim along the way and see if there's some way to just show that we really do care about this. Just as you recall, the conversation has gone from, well, we have no way to tell. It's really hard. That was, I think, the original before this current witnesses. Anyway, but like, oh well, and there's not that many, and it's not a big deal. And then now they have I wrote it down. They have a discipline and ongoing improvement plan, which I think is a big step. And I commend the department for taking the bull by the horns here. And so this bill keeps the discussion ahead of us. And so I think that's been a good discussion. So thank you for your comments, Senator. And Senator Draheim, if you want to do like a 10-second wrap up, then we're going to adopt the amendment and see if we can move this along. Oh,
Thank you, Chair Abler.
Senator Benson, sorry, go ahead.
No, Senator Benson has something to share, please.
Okay.
I just wanted to reiterate, Mr. Chair, you said a lot of what I was going to say. When we first found this problem, when the plans brought it to us, the department's position was the problem doesn't exist. And I don't know why you're making a big deal about this. So we're still building some trust with the new leadership in the department. I don't see Senator Draheim's bill as a threat to new leadership and to what Mr. Anderson is doing. What I see is it's part of the transition from what had been very much we haven't done anything wrong at the department to this new culture of discipline as we've come to know it. And so I'm fine continuing the discussion with the department about some of this improved discipline. And I'm thankful for Senator Draheim keeping his eye on this kind of work.
Thanks. Well, we have a pretty heavy agenda here yet today. So let's Senator Utke renews his motion to adopt the A4 amendment. So if people want to unmute, I think we're fully aware of it. And, so if I can just ask people to vote on the A4, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any of those opposed to the A4, say nay or something. So Anyway, so that's adopted. Senator Draheim, if you want to take 20 seconds to say your last words, and then this will go off and we can, but I think it's a good example of a department taking notice at something that's a big deal. So thank you, department, for taking notice at this and working to fix it. And Senator Wickham, thank you for being engaged along the way. I appreciate your thoughtfulness. Senator Draheim.
I just wanted to thank everybody, and just as a refresher, back in 2006, the agency said they had 7% of their numbers that overlap, and then in 2018 it was down to 5 or 6%. But that's still millions of dollars, or $1 million or $2 million probably every month. And I know Chair Abler and Chair Benson, you're going to need that money come May when we're doing our budget bill. And that's the whole intent of this, is to make sure we do have the resources to go to the right places. So thank you for your time.
And so Senator Draheim, maybe when you take this up in the other committee, that members could be afforded that report. And it may be across my desk, but I don't remember reading it. So I think it's a good discussion. We're prepared to take the vote. Anybody raising their hand if they want to say something else? Don't see one. So again, unmute and all in favor of passing Senate File 35 as amended to the with recommendation to pass to the what's your committee called today? Health and Human Services, Finance and Policy Bill Committee. You need a longer name, Senator Benson. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. I believe the amendment, the motion prevails and the bill is passed. So everybody good with that? Thank you. Senator Champion, welcome to the committee. Thank you, Senator Draheim.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much for having me today. I sincerely appreciate being able to appear in front of this wonderful committee.
So Senator Wickman, would you like to move Senate File 35 to be in front of us? Oh, no, not 35, 119.
119, sir.
Next. Okay.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Senator Champion, did you, so go ahead and tell us what your plan is here.
Okay, let me tell you what my plan is. So first of all, as I mentioned already, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for hearing this bill. This is a very important bill. And I'd like for you to know why, or what was the impetus for me putting this bill forward. Number one, I recognize that the Department of Human Services has work that they need to do. And a part of that work when it comes to licensing is to make sure individuals that they are given license to are the right individuals. Now, right is subjective, but I believe that there are some things that are currently in place that sort of unfairly decreases that pool, right? And it does not, and the process as it sits right now does not yield itself to a cross-section of individuals, and that the department has some extraordinary power that I think if misused, it doesn't yield the best results. For an example, Mr. Chair, as you know, that if there's an individual, and we'll eventually get to the amendment, but I think that this will help. If there's an individual who gets arrested and is not charged with a crime, for whatever reason, they're not charged. It could be 10 years that goes by, it could be 5 years that goes by, but they decide that they want to apply for a license. In that scenario, the Department of Human Services, as a part of their process, can take that arrest record where no one's been charged with a crime. There could be years between when they were arrested and law enforcement may have figured out that the person was the wrong person. But the Department of Human Services can take that arrest record and deny someone a license without that person having the benefit of pushing back or cross-examining witnesses, nothing. That's scenario one. Here's scenario two. There could be a situation where that same arrest record that I've talked about, that the county sheriff or some other outside agency looks at that arrest record and determines that that record should be expunged and goes through the process of expunging it outside of the judicial process, which is 609A. In this scenario, the same department can now take that arrest record that was expunged by the sheriff's department or whoever and still use it against the subject to deny them a license. I just believe that that's inherently challenging. And I'll give you another scenario. And I know I only have a limited amount of time, but this is setting up the other people who I believe can also shed some light on this. Even though this would be something that we will have to fight another day, there are situations where someone is charged with a crime, goes through the judicial process, and they get exonerated. The department still can use that. Now, I know most people argue that there's a difference in the burden of proof when you think in terms of a criminal case, because it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And what the department looks at is preponderance of evidence. And even though I recognize that folks can say, well, maybe the county attorney's office just didn't have enough evidence. That could be true. But we do not have a better process by allowing the Department of Human Services to just, even in that scenario, accept what they believe to be true, but there's no adversarial aspect of it where an individual can say, hey, the information that you are reviewing and taking as true should not be accepted as true.
Yeah, thanks,
So
Senator Champion. If you could kind of stick to the expungement part, where you're going to lose your audience on this, and I think that you're either, if you're intending to take up the amendment that has that in it, then that's a different discussion. But if you have an amendment to your amendment, then I would like to know what you've decided to go in that direction.
Okay, so here's what I've decided to do. So I will submit the A3 amendment and then make some modifications to it so that you fulfill your requirement as a committee to have it for it to have been published and so on and so forth. So that's what I like to do. So if someone can move the A3 amendment, then I can tell you what I would like to happen.
And thank you. Just so members know what we're doing here. The bill is about expungement. And I totally agree with the challenges of wrongful charges and almost arrests that were the wrong arrest. And Senator Champion had an amendment that expanded the bill beyond expungement. And my counsel to him was to stick with expungement of any sort. And so Senator Wickman, if Senator Wickman moves to A3, and then Mr. Champion or Mr. Hauswald, if you want to offer us the amendment to the amendment, that would be nice.
Okay, so what I would do is ask Senate Counsel to shed some light on Section 4. That was the broad section that you felt was too broad, Mr. Chair, that I think we could potentially narrow in a way to address the expungement aspect of things as you identified. So if Senate Counsel can do that, and then I will move that.
Mr. Hauswald,
we'll ask that it be moved.
How you would, an amendment you would suggest for Senator Wickland, please.
Mr. Chair and members, essentially the amendment that I'm going to articulate would eliminate item 4 at lines 2.26 through 2.29. What I've described as sort of the catch-all provision in the summary of the amendment. So strictly speaking, the oral amendment would be as follows. Line 2.24, after the semicolon, insert or. Line 2.25, after 609A.025, delete the semicolon or, and insert a period. And then delete lines 2.26 through 2.29.
Okay, and thank you. Just I appreciate that amendment. So just to repeat the amendment on line 2.24, we're going to insert the word or at the after the semicolon. Line 2.25, we're going to delete the semicolon and the word or and insert a period, and delete lines 2.26 to 2.29. Everybody clear on that? And Senator Wickman, you can just simply incorporate that into your amendment if you're okay with that.
Okay. So we won't have to vote on that separately.
No.
Okay.
Are you okay to incorporate that?
If Senator Champion is, that would be fine.
So Senator Wickman will incorporate that. So maybe if you can briefly describe this, Senator Champion, as it's amended, or should we just have testifiers?
Maybe we should have Senate Counsel just briefly tell us the impact of that change.
Please.
And then I would also like for him to talk about another potential change that would address the chair's concerns as well, but still address a balance that I think would be helpful.
Well, Senator Champion, if this decides to drag on too long, we're gonna have to continue the bill. So
No,
I'm trying to
it's
help
not going to
keep
drag
in the
on, Mr.
model. So
Chair.
Mr. Hauswald, you can describe, and this is going to go to judiciary, which will not be a committee that's going to willy-nilly do anything. So I think the idea of our work today is, do we think expungement should be considered or should be not considered in some of these background studies? That's the question really before us. And the
So then,
details
Mr.
of
Chair, it
that
sounds like
would be decided by judiciary. So maybe Mr. Hauswald, if you want to describe the impact of the amendment, the A3 amendment as amended, please.
Mr. Chair and members, very briefly, for those of you who were on this committee in 2019, you'll recognize this amendment actually. What it does is it shortens the introduced language to make the changes in just 2 sections of law rather than repeating the same language in 5 sections of law. So if I can point you to the language at starting at line 2.15, the amendment as amended precludes the commissioner from considering, not obtaining, considering the information listed in the categories when the information is obtained through either the BCA, the juvenile courts, or the number of sources listed in the 2nd section. So if the commissioner obtains, moving to item 1 at line 2.18, a record that was expunged under 260B or 609A, 260B being the juvenile statutes, 609A being the adult expungement statutes, where the commissioner receives notice and is served with a copy of the expungement order, those records would not be eligible for consideration. Item 2 is any underlying fact or element of that expunged record, which includes an arrest or a criminal charge, or for juveniles, the taking of a child into custody or a delinquency petition. Also where the petition for expungement was served and given to the Department of Human Services. Those 2 categories describe the statutory expungement process with the service and the orders being directed to the department. Item 3 in that list refers to sealed records under section 299C.11 and 609A.025. And those 2 sections are, they function as the expungement statutes do, except for a few slight differences. 299C.11 is a statutory process that essentially functions as an expungement of certain records without the need for an individual to file a petition with the court under 609A. Specifically, if an individual has is in the one of 2 situations. 1, they're arrested and the charges are dismissed prior to a determination of probable cause. And 2, the person is arrested and the prosecuting authority declines to file any charges. If a person falls into one of those 2 categories and has a 10-year record of no convictions of a felony or a gross misdemeanor, the BCA is directed by that statute to automatically destroy certain records tied to that individual. So it's sort of, and it explicitly states that no petition under Chapter 609A is required for that to happen. And the petition under 609A is the typical petition for expungement. So it's sort of expungement without the name of expungement. Section 609A.025 is a particular provision in the expungement statutes that permits expungement to take place without a petition being filed if the prosecutor agrees that that should happen. So it's just, those are 2 sections that enable expungement without the formal filing of a petition. Continuing in the amendment, section or item 4 is what we eliminated from the language. The language at lines 2.30 to 2.31 is the result of some technical assistance that we received from the department back in 2019 about this amendment, which would just, I believe, permit the commissioner access to certain administrative records that otherwise would throw a wrench into the process that they described as sort of a necessary call out in this amendment.
So
very finally, the final section of the amendment, line 3.13, is just a conforming change that ties the 2 sections together, that reinforces that the information that falls into these precluded categories, whether it comes from a request to the BCA, the juvenile courts, or one of the listed entities in this section, subdivision 3, from lines 3.17 to 3.26.
So,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair, that
Household.
addresses
Senator
all of your
Campbell.
concerns. So that addresses all of your concerns, and I have two testifiers who could take just a minute just to say something,
Right.
and then we can move out of the committee's hair.
And I appreciate that. I would like the public, if they're watching, as they watch, to know if this were the final committee of this, to do this legislation, we would spend an hour on it, and we would take people both for and against. But as I see the role of this committee, it's like, is this really something we should try to consider in our system? And where there's another committee that is much more versed in the legal side of this on the road ahead. So I'm comfortable with that. Ms. Evans and Mr. Thomas, if you could literally take 1 minute, and I presume you're both here as supporters. If you want to give us an example of somebody, or just, and I'm sorry the time is so short, but Ms. Evans, I presume you'll be testifying in the other committee too. So welcome to the committee. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for your time and consideration on this important piece of legislation. I'm the Director of Advocacy at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, and Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge hires hundreds of staff a year across the state. In 2019 alone, we hired 352 staff and interns. And we make it our mission to hire individuals who understand trauma and pain. And those are the people that work best with our clients that are dealing with addiction themselves. I'm going to speed this up. It's only about 3 minutes long, but I don't want to waste the committee's time.
Just 30 seconds to do the
Just
give us an example.
The cases that I work with generally.
Ms. Evans, abandon your testimony.
Well,
and give me a little story about somebody who couldn't get work because of this. Just one short story, please. Okay.
Yep, this is a really tough one because when you're dealing with expungement, the one thing that I just would like to really highlight under this one is that it's one thing to be precluded from working because of something that you've done. It's a completely different thing to be precluded from working for something that you didn't do. And when you're dealing with people that have struggled with addiction, like there's no due process for it, right? There's no argument for it when you're dealing with DHS. And for me, when I did my expungements and even my pardon, I'm a person of privilege. I'm a person with connections. I'm a person with education. And I was able to deal with that bureaucracy and able to work through that, and not everybody is. And so we need to just eliminate some of these processes through DHS so that we can have more people in our businesses and in our systems that are able to get back to work and get their lives back together. And these kind of processes, we need to get rid of them. It's too much. So
that was excellent testimony, Ms. Evans. And so Mr. Thomas, I presume you're here as a supporter as well. So I'm sorry there's not more time, but if you could just want to introduce yourself and give us your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Charles Thomas. I'm an attorney with Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services. Our office covers the southern 33 counties of Minnesota, providing free legal aid. Our office, I guess I wanted to say these are important issues. And this background study and disqualification process, we see clients who get knocked out of their jobs. And it sometimes takes months and months for us to undo the things that got them there and get them back into a job or in school. And there's delayed process. There's a lot of uncertainty and lack of clarity for how people go through this. Expungement is part of the answer. And I think this amendment will support people who are trying to get back to work and get an education and become productive citizens. So I know that the committee's time is short. Thank you.
Thank you. I may be as optimistic trying to fit these two bills in with the other big topic. But so let's first adopt the amendment, and then I have two more members that have questions, Senator Nelson and Senator Benson. So everybody understand the A3? Senator Whitman renews her motion to we adopt the A3 amendment as amended. All unmute, and all in favor of that say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All those opposed? Okay, the amendment's adopted. Senator Nelson, if you could be brief, I appreciate it.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be very brief. I just want to say that I have a constituent that this exact issue happened to. She took all of her training, got the credentials, only to find out because of a prior offense that was somehow, I don't have all the details if it was the expungement issue or the fact, I don't have the details of what was on her record. But the point is, she had taken all of the credits, passed with flying colors, got all the credentials, but couldn't get the job that those credentials were for. It was heartbreaking. And how would she have known that she would not be able to get that job once she got those credentials? So I wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you very much. And Senator Benson.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, and I remember hearing this before. Senator Champion, could you just clear up some of the concerns around, we're dealing with Section 609 and some of those issues and how we're still protecting the public there. And I know, Mr. Chair, you don't want us to move on to, or you don't want to take a lot of time, but somebody following the links on this legislation will end up in Chapter 609, and it looks concerning. So if you could address some of those concerns, Senator Champion.
Senator Benson, I just want to remind you that people think it's glamorous being a chair, and we all know how that might not be. We do our best to set a schedule and try to get stuff done. But I hope that I never let a member not ask a question, no matter how time is going. So Senator Benson, I'm happy you asked the question. So Senator Champion, please.
So I'll keep it brief, Mr. Chair. So 609A is the new expungement law that I was the chief author of. And what it is that if someone wants an expungement, they have to file a petition. They have to then serve law enforcement, county attorneys. They have to serve every interested party. And if their underlying offense included a victim, they also have to notify that victim of a day as to when this issue is going to be heard. They have to demonstrate that they've been rehabilitated, that they've met the statutory timelines between when they got released from probation, and that they don't have any new charges to show that they're law abiding. And they have to demonstrate that the benefit for them to have this record sealed outweighs the public's right to know. So there's a process to go through that. And the court takes all this information in, allows everyone to speak to the issue before making a decision. And then once a decision is made, that order has to go out to all the necessary parties. And specifically for DHS or any executive branch or any other branch that you want to be subject to that order, they have to receive notice as well. So everyone has to receive notice, and the court goes through it. And there's no guarantee that a person is going to get an expungement. It takes a whole lot of work. And last but certainly not least, we also know that law enforcement still has access to an expunged record, even though the public can't see it and the business community can't see certain things if it's ordered that that record is expunged. But the court is very clear, and they don't take it lightly. So the public is protected. The public has a right, but we always believe that the public should have an opportunity to speak and to be heard and to present information and to demonstrate or show that they've been rehabilitated and they've addressed any issues that the court may consider important. So I hope that answers your question, Senator Benson, and that you will agree with us and go forward with this bill.
Senator Benson.
And Mr. Chair, my concern wasn't so much 609A, but underlying 245C, for example, this section applies to 245C.15. And so that's kind of what I was hoping Senator Champion would be able to address, because it talks about felonies, gross misdemeanors. And as we're looking at moving this language forward, are we expunging people who would have been otherwise prohibited under, I'm flipping back over. And this is the nice thing about having digital documents in front of us, but it, for example, would link to predatory offender registrations, murder in the first degree. I just need him to say that's what I was looking
Senator
for.
Champion.
Can you say it in a better sentence than I just said it?
Yes. So those offenses that you just named are not eligible for expungements under 609A. Those most serious, egregious things like that, not even sexual crimes or anything of that nature under that law, they would not be eligible.
Okay, that's what I needed. Thank you.
And so I think the point of the bill is, as Ms. Evans so eloquently said, if you get an expungement, it shouldn't matter. So please let good people work in an arena where we need good workers. And when you go through the very challenging sieve of oversight to get an expungement, with all the people being informed, it should matter. That's really, I think, the decision of this committee. I think it's been a really productive discussion. And I'm glad it got prolonged a little bit. I think that was good information. Anybody else? Seeing none, Senator Wickman renews her motion that Senate File 119 as amended be recommended to pass.
Omar Fata has a question or hand raised.
Oh,
sorry.
I didn't see your hand.
No problem. No problem. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Melissa. It's not really a question; it's more of a comment. I just want to say thank you to Senator Bobby Joe Champion for his work on this. I believe that it's the right thing to do for all the reasons you stated. An expungement shouldn't matter, but it also addresses our workforce need, right? In an area that we have a workforce shortage. I can't speak today, but so thank you so much, and I just wanted to have that comment.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much, Senator Fatah.
And clearly, I'm the chair who doesn't always notice hands, so don't be afraid to say, "Hey there," and then, well, this Zoom thing has to be allowable there in my mind, anyway. Anybody else? Going once, twice? All right. Let's try again. Senator Wickman renews her motion again that Senate File 119 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. All in favor of that, unmute and say aye.
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 Anybody opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion prevails and the bill is re-referred. Good luck, Senator Champion. I think this is a very
thank you, Mr. Chair, and sorry that I took a little longer than anticipated. Have a wonderful day.
Quality products deserve quality time, Senator. So Senator Hoffman has that presentation now, which is really interesting as well. And so he's lined up quite a crew, and the department's going to talk. But let me just turn it over to Senator Hoffman, and I guess I'll moderate as chair, but it's Senator Hoffman's topic. So
thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I just wanted to say this. Yeah, this is a great discussion, and what a great segue to have Senator Bobby Joe Champion talk about the expungement and to have folks here talking about recovery. And that's a couple of things. You know, there's a presentation DHS is going to do over regarding the behavioral health divisions and hopefully tie us into this theme about recovery and our theme about, you know, where substance abuse, mental health, everything kind of interrelates. And I think it's going to be an opportunity for us to lay some groundwork, so understanding, and also see from a 30,000 foot observation about what's the system doing right now, what we know works and what we know doesn't work. And Senator Abler, if you may, I know we're going to hear from Paul Fleischner, Neera Singh, Carol McDade, Jordan Hansen, and David Wellstone regarding this. And I'm excited to get that information. And I just wanted to just highlight that under SAMHSA, we know that there are 4 major dimensions that support life and recovery. And the thing that always keeps me up at night is thinking about when we talk about a purpose, right? And getting into the community side of it. So there are 4. There's health, there's home, there's purpose, and there's community. And with embedded in community is about relationships and social networks, friendship, love, and hope. And then that falls into where SAMHSA, who oversees all of our substance abuse, mental health federally and within the state, there are 10 guiding principles to recovery. And the one thing that's always highlighted as missing is the relational one. And of those 10, I think this is one that's going to highlight where our current way of doing substance abuse and addiction and system-wide could possibly create some and show some gaps where we need to really fill those in. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for having that. And with that, I know our time is short. We're now, looking at 40 minutes versus 60 minutes. So maybe we can kind of shrink things down. And having said that, I will now put myself on silent.
thank you, Senator Hoffman. So Mr. Fleischner and Ms. Singh, are you doing a joint presentation? And there will be a bill coming of some sort of pilot out of this. This is just meant to highlight this very interesting opportunity and also talk about substance abuse, which is one of our responsibility areas and our our first real mention of it. So with all that, Mr. Fleissner and Ms. Singh, if you just kind of maybe don't go quite as deep as you might have, and then we'd like to have some time to chat at the end because we have quite an august list of presenters. So welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Abler. Paul Fleissner, Behavioral Health Division Director. I'm here with Dr. Nirja Singh, who's our Behavioral Health Clinical Director. You can move to the next slide. I'll keep it short in areas that I think this is just our agenda, so we can move it along. Next slide. So what is behavioral health? As SAMHSA defines behavioral health, it's the promotion of mental health, resilience and well-being, the treatment of mental health and substance use disorders, and the support of those who experience and or are in recovery for those conditions, along with their families and communities. I would add in our division, we are also responsible for things like gambling, addiction, and nicotine enforcement. Next slide. As we think about the Minnesota model, Minnesota has been a leader in substance use for quite some time, using an integrated model to support people who have substance use needs, which works across professions, works across systems to try to support people, and it's been very effective. Not for everyone, but it is a highly effective model. We have gaps, as you know. The Behavioral Health Fund, which used to be called our Consolidated Chemical Dependency Treatment Fund, is our major funding for the system. It's what has blended medical assistance, regional treatment of substance use disorder budget, state and federal grants into one fund. In this fund, the county assesses the client's needs for SUD treatment, the eligible client in a treatment program, and uses that fund to pay for the treatment. With the advent of direct access to SUD treatment, county's responsibility as assessing and placing authorities will stop June 30th, 2022. The substance use disorder reform effort passed in 2017 legislative session to develop a recovery-oriented system of care to expand this service system, created reimbursement for activities such as peer recovery support and treatment coordination. I think that's one of the things that's been a huge gap in terms of long-term recovery and supports, and reduce barriers to accessing treatment through a means called direct access. Basically, people had more doors to get services. We have a robust service system of over 350 licensed providers. And as we think about the current system, it is state supervised, county administered, although we're moving more towards a person-centered approach. We have been investing in community services after regional treatment centers closed in the 1990s through mental health initiatives and other service investments by the state. Medicaid coverage of services started in the mid-2000s through the rehab option. And parity for mental health and substance use disorder also has expanded our service system. Next slide, please. You can move to the next slide, please. So the prevalence, 182,781 adults with serious mental illness and children with serious emotional disturbances in our state. Estimated 5.2% of all U.S. adults with a serious mental illness. About 2/3 received mental treatment during the year. Nearly $1.2 billion state expenditure for those services. We have about 64,000, a little over 64,000 drug and alcohol admissions, over 2/3 white, 32% BIPOC or other. Primary substance used at admission, 38% alcohol, 27% methamphetamine, and about 35% injectable drugs, heroin, and other opiates. Next slide, please. This gives you a little more detail. It's a little more subtle in that you still see alcohol at the top, methamphetamine number 2. If you break out heroin from the other opiates, you see that injectable drug use is 3rd, heroin 4th, and then other opiates. Next slide. And if you look at funding in the overall system, it's roughly a third, and a third. Private pay, a third. Public pay through the Behavioral Health Fund now, and about a third for the Minnesota Public Programs and Managed Care Organizations. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Singh as she walks you through our continuum of care for the various behavioral health services. Dr. Singh?
Dr. Singh, welcome to the committee.
Sorry, I was talking, unmuted. Mr. Chair and members, my name is Nirja Singh. I am the Clinical Director for Community Support Administration, and Behavioral Health Division is part of Community Support Administration. I'm not going to go over the whole continuum, but as you'll see, Mr. Chair and members, Minnesota has really attempted to build a continuum of care for its children, ranging from outpatient, which is like when child is served in the community, to all the way to psychiatric residential treatment facilities, which is like a hospital level of care. And there are multiple layers of other services which fall on the continuum as determined by the needs and the risks which are manifested by the child at the time of his or her assessment. Next slide, please. Very much like adult, very much like children services, Mr. Chair and members, we have a continuum of care for adult mental health. And as you'll see, it ranges from outpatient community-based treatment to all the way to hospital level of mental health and substance use care. So the service intensity is determined by the assessment, which is conducted by a licensed mental health or substance use professional to determine the needs, as well as the risks, and then match services in accordingly. There are other services, as you'll see on your screen, like targeted case management, crisis services, which lie somewhere on the continuum. And target case management is something that Mr. Fleisner was talking about as treatment coordination. So this service is really helpful in connecting the clients with various other resources they need besides like direct intervention for their mental health concerns. Next slide, please. Mr. Chair, members, on your screen, you guys will see a substance use disorder continuum of services. As Mr. Fleisner pointed out, besides like having direct treatment services, the Behavioral Health Division also has a bunch of like prevention oriented services like tobacco prevention, gambling prevention, and majority of these efforts are funded by SAMHSA. And very much like mental health, Minnesota has tried to build a continuum for substance use services, ranging from outpatient all the way to inpatient services. Next slide, please. So community support, Mr. Chair, as members were talking before we began this presentation, it aims to surround the individual, the Medicaid enrollee, with all the support systems which are shown on your screen. It starts with like housing stabilization, and that is a brand new Medicaid benefit. The services began in July 2020, and both mental health and substance use disorder diagnoses are considered eligible to receive housing stabilization services. We have mental health targeted case management that is aimed to connect people with resources. We have various like waivers, like developmental disabilities waiver, elderly waiver, personal care assistance, again, like more for people with developmental disabilities, but also who have significant mental health or substance use concerns and how they can be connected with the resources. Behavioral health homes are like Minnesota's version of like federal health homes, which include the services like comprehensive case management, health promotion, and wellness. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Fleisner, who can talk about how behavioral health is coordinating with other systems.
Chair Abler,
Fleisner, welcome back.
Thank you. Chair Abler and members, one of the things that has to happen, and we heard it from Senator Hoffman, is linking these services together in communities. If you can't keep someone's recovery on track if they don't have housing, and if we keep throwing people in criminal justice, or the front door is criminal justice or emergency departments, it's not real effective at getting people to stay in recovery or stay stable on their mental health. So as we think about this system and working with our partners in the community, we need to be really intentional about working across these systems. For example, one of the, you can stay, oh, anyway, one of the examples I would give you is when we were looking at how we keep people more stable in the community in Olmsted County when I was still there, we had the housing authority, and being able to do master leasing for people with some of the barriers we heard on testimony earlier, who maybe had criminal records, bad credit histories, was a game changer in terms of them staying in treatment, getting jobs, staying in jobs, and not repeating offenses. So those are critical strategies toward getting a more successful outcome for people. In terms of gaps, we don't have enough crisis services out there or crisis beds. The opioid crisis has obviously tested our system. We heard previous testimony that there's a workforce shortage. That's absolutely true. We don't have enough people in this system doing the work, and we need to think about that workforce issue, which I know is down later too. We also have access issues, whether it be in terms of cultural competence or in rural parts of our state. We have a variety of ways that are challenging for people to access. So how do we overcome those? And those are things we have to work again with our partners and the people we serve to define and build our system. And that support for long-term recovery. How do we make sure that there are tools and support networks and connections, as Senator Hoffman talked about, to support people long-term, because that's when we really see good outcomes. With that, I'll turn the others back to Dr. Singh.
Dr. Singh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I would like to talk about the unique challenges that COVID-19 has posed for our behavioral health service delivery system. As it's clear that COVID had led to increase in mental health as well as substance use crisis across the country, across the world. And in Minnesota, we are not an exception to that. So we were able to do a lot of waivers for how the services were delivered with support from the federal government. And one of the waivers Minnesota did was telemedicine. So we were able to do the service delivery using telemedicine. And when I say telemedicine, Mr. Chair and members, I mean like anything which can range from use a phone to FaceTime to ranging to like totally secure HIPAA compliant audio visual system. So we conducted a study on to gauge the effectiveness of telemedicine as well as utilization, and we did find that these waivers helped people to access services, but we also found out that telemedicine does not work for everyone. And also, eventually, we are exploring how to make some of these changes permanent to address the issue of access in rural communities. But at the same time, we found out that utilization of telemedicine in our BIPOC communities was significantly lower when compared to the white population. So we are still exploring what possible reasons could have led to that low access. There are significant concerns from the providers regarding the rates, the community-based behavioral health rates, especially pandemic has made it really hard for providers to sustain their services. So we are working with the providers looking at those. And while doing that, there's another collaborative effort that's going on in the form of Uniform Service Standards. And Mr. Chair and members, this project will help to mitigate any duplication across different fields of behavioral health. So we have very much provider-friendly, client-focused system of paperwork and other licensing and certification requirements, so providers can focus on the clients. Next slide, please. So there are two major system transformation work that is going on. I will briefly touch on 1115, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Fleischner to talk about CCBHCs. So Minnesota currently is implementing a waiver for 1115. That is to reform our substance use disorder treatment. And what this is this waiver is doing is it is helping us to implement the standards across the state of Minnesota, evidence-based standards, which are developed by American Society of Addiction Medicine, ASIM. So this reform, besides helping in creating a uniform evidence-based system of care, this will also help the state to access federal dollars for the clients who are currently placed in our IMD facilities, the residential care, because right now we cannot. So we are really excited that we got all the approvals. We are working closely with the providers, and at this time we are enrolling providers in this system. And with that, I will turn it to Mr. Fleisner to talk about CCBHC model.
Mr. Fleisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. The Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic model, I'm a big believer. I had the opportunity to have one in our community in Rochester, and it's a game changer where you integrate psychiatry, primary care, dental, and behavioral health services, housing, employment. To me, it's the most effective model of care for folks. And as we look as a state to expand this model, I can tell you from a perspective at the local level, it was a game changer for our system. So I'm excited about this model. I think our private providers are doing a great job with it, and I think it is going to take our service system to another place where we really serve people better. Thank you. With that, we'll stand for questions, Chair Abler.
Well, thank you. So maybe if someone has a question off the top of their head, we'll do that, and then we'll move into the testifiers. Senator Benson has a question. Is it off the top of your head? I'm only taking top of the head questions.
Well, this one I've had for a while, so
okay.
Frankly,
perfect. You qualify.
I was just wondering, as we're going through this pandemic, we keep hearing about the stress of mental health. We're tracking data on overdoses. I'm wondering if these behavioral health folks could send the committee documentation of some of the trends that they've seen over time, just to help us wrap our heads around what's going to come, because behavioral health issues don't go away with the end of an executive order, and we need to be cognizant of it. And so if they've collected data over the course of the pandemic, I would appreciate seeing it. And that's so not off the top of my head and not even directly on your topic, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that, but I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Senator Benson. You never felt compelled to stay on topic, but if one of the two of you would like to reply, that'd be great.
Chair Abler, Senator Benson, yes, we do have data on trends and including suicides, and we will get that information to the committee. Thank you.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the presentation, and I especially appreciate the gaps page. And I'd also thought that the pages with all the continuum of care was helpful to kind of get a big picture. We so often get a piecemeal thing, and this is actually a very useful handout. And so I presume in your budget coming out next week, there'll be some discussion of some of the gaps that you're interested in working on. And we'll take up some more of those then. But I think today's discussion is about some of those gaps as well. So. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am beside the road, not on the road. Just want to make that clear. Okay. But I did want to just add really my strong support here. Mr. Fleisner was very involved as this, what I would call excellence in mental health setting was started in Olmsted County, and it has been so successful. It is the best. I believe it is, as we said when we passed that Excellence in Mental Health Act, it is a game changer in how we can better treat and manage mental health. And there's no better time than right now, as Senator Benson said. We have seen such increases in unmet mental health needs that this expansion could not to other parts of the state cannot come soon enough. This is what you like, Mr. Chair, which are pilots that are proven highly successful, and then we expand them statewide. So
thank you,
well done.
Okay, let's move into testimony. So we have 3 testifiers, and Senator Hoffman, I presume do you want to just introduce them and call them? So set up what we're going to hear, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And that was a good, the premise to this whole thing. And thank you, Mr. Fleissner and Dr. Singh for setting it up. Carol McDade knows this system inside and out from a federal level and to many state systems. And so we wanted to get her perspective on what she sees. Again, it's this 30,000 foot level and what some of those gaps that were identified in our presentation from the department. It'll be good for us to have the conversation. So welcome, Carol McDade, to Minnesota.
You picked a nice day to come. I think it's sunny out. Welcome to the committee, Ms. McDade.
Thank you. Chairman Abler, Ranking Member Hoffman, and distinguished committee members. My name is Carol McDade. I'm a principal at Capital Decisions, Inc., a Washington, D.C. government relations firm. I have specialized in mental health and substance use disorder federal policy since 1993. I also co-founded the McShin Foundation, Virginia's oldest recovery community organization, with my husband, John Shinholzer, in 2004. Based on the presentation by the department on the increase in treatment admissions and the prevalence rates, it's clear that Minnesota is experiencing some of the same issues that states across the country, unfortunately, are facing, both with the pandemic and this increase in suicide and overdose rates that were happening even before the pandemic hit. The other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't see in the department's data, but I know that it sounds like they're going to supply the committee, is that Provisional Center for Disease Control data for the state of Minnesota shows that there's been a 30% increase in overdose deaths in your state between June of 19 and June of 20. So you, like many other states, are facing dramatic increases in these deaths, which makes this hearing so timely. Despite the passage of several pieces of federal legislation and billions of dollars appropriated in both state and federal grants, overdose rates were on the rise even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit and have continued to skyrocket. Why are we still failing at designing an effective system to treat rather than incarcerate those with mental health and substance use disorders? Why are there long waiting lists for public sector treatment in most states? While there's no one precise answer, part of the problem is that the care most patients receive, and mindful that only 10 to 11% of patients receive any help at all for these conditions, has not changed much in the last 50 years. While medications to treat alcohol and opioid use disorders have been brought to bear in the last 20 years, and there are now numerous mobile apps to help people with these chronic illnesses, most patients have been receiving the same outpatient and residential treatment with a few minor modifications, like I said, with MAT, medication-assisted treatment, but with the same efficacy rate that's been hovering nationally, and obviously there's some exceptions to this, but hovering nationally around 30% efficacy rates. This does not need to remain the case. Behavioral health innovations in the last 10 to 15 years offer promise and hope to the approximately 23 million people in the US who need help for substance use disorder, and the thousands of Minnesotans whose names are on the waiting list for treatment for days, if not weeks, depending on where they live in the state. Digital programs and applications are increasingly popular tools for providing treatment and sustaining recovery from substance use disorders. I use a couple of them myself to help sustain my 23 years in long-term recovery from addiction. These technology-based interventions can be used either as an adjunct to traditional treatment or as a standalone therapy in both rural and urban areas. For example, just to throw out a few, the TEST, the Therapeutic Education System, is a self-directed therapeutic intervention for people with addiction and can be used as a standalone treatment or in conjunction with outpatient treatment. NIDA tested the efficacy of this in a clinical trial in 15 spots around the country and found it to be as effective as other clinician provided treatments. One of the findings is that patients can use their mobile devices when they feel most at risk anytime in the day or night, which not only helps to reduce relapse rates, but also increases retention rates in whatever the therapy that they are in. Other types of technology-based interventions that can build capacity to treat mental health and addiction include embedding prompts in electronic healthcare records consultation and social support platforms, personal exploration and education, collaborative care, and virtual tele-addiction and telepsychiatry visits.
You okay with this?
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to continue or stop?
Sorry, there was just some side chatter. So
Oh,
that
okay.
wasn't me.
Okay. Attached to my testimony and available in my written testimony are 2 charts that explain the enormous types of technology that are used in substance use care. In 2018, the Food and Drug Administration cleared the first mobile medical application called Reset, and that has found incredible outcomes in clinical trials. This is a curriculum, an online curriculum that's actually been approved by the FDA as a clinical intervention. And, you can dig deeper into my testimony, but basically they had anywhere from 60 to 80% improvement in abstinence and retention rates in the programs that use this in the clinical trial. Digital therapeutics also can include cognitive behavioral therapy and recovery coaching modules. Patient-facing technology, which we're also going to talk about today, includes the use of smartphones and emails. Patient-facing modalities are directed towards a set of psychological interventions, and interestingly, they're personalized for changing patients' drug-using behavior, and the personalization is quite important. The major goals of these interventions are user insight development, again, user insight about their own behavior, motivation, reducing and managing cravings, relapse prevention, and coping with everyday life stressor strategies. Also included in patient-facing technology or text messaging apps are remote monitoring for staff, reminders, and follow-up for patients to check in. Pathfinder, an app being tested in Minnesota and other places in the country, is used by clinicians to monitor their outpatient participants and is also patient-facing, allowing patients to locate self-help meetings, self-report difficult feelings, and get support from others or learn a new wellness skill. In closing, Minnesota's addiction crisis requires, as it's been accustomed to being considered by the rest of the country, best-in-class care for substance use disorder for individuals, families, and communities devastated by SUD. If you are to demo some of these technologies, the rest of the country needs to know the outcomes of those demos. Minnesotans should no longer receive one-size-fits-all treatment. Treatments must include technological innovations that can improve treatment outcomes, allow patients like me and millions of others to reach, sustain, and self-manage their recovery to help them lead the best self-directed version of their lives and becoming productive tax-paying citizens in your community. Thank you, and time permitting, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Ms. McDade. And so we're not going to take too many questions now. We'll let the testifiers all say what they're going to say. But so using this technology, we can go from 30 to what % success?
Well, as I suggested in my testimony, Reset, which is this digital online curriculum that accompanies outpatient, has been shown to improve both retention rates and abstinence rates 60 to 80% in the clinical trial that allowed them to get approval by the FDA. And that was both for alcohol use disorder and opioid use disorder.
Well, thanks. That's a high bar and a challenge. That's why we're here, is to help unpack, repack, and help with the gaps. So that's very amazing. And I believe your testimony is in the packet, I think. So,
there are charts there as well that spell out more.
We'll be talking to you more, and so will Senator Hoffman. So, Mr. Hansen, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I have a few slides here. Can you see them?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. I won't take too much time. My name is Jordan Hansen. I'm the CEO of a local startup called Your Path. I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and for me, that means it's been 12 years living in recovery and also 10 years working as a clinician. I've had the honor of being able to do consultation and training all around the country. Done a tremendous amount of work in Appalachia and in the Ohio River Valley, where we've seen the worst outcomes related to opioid use disorder, and also some of the greatest limitations when it comes to our system of care. If you forget everything I talked about today, we have two things that I want to impart to you, is that we are in a crisis within a crisis. So some sort of horrible Russian nesting doll of a pandemic within a pandemic. And if we look at other large scale public health crises or economic events like the Great Depression, usually we see about a 3-year delay until the effects become part of our data set. And so these data, in my opinion, do not reflect the nature of the pandemic yet. And so these are overdoses that MDH has shared with us. I have a feeling that this trend line will continue to go up, and the urgency to act needs to be there as sort of a systemic approach to our system of care. Just some more data. This is not just an opioid epidemic. This is not an opioid crisis. This is not an issue with heroin. This is a behavioral health issue. It is a trauma issue. It's a prevention issue. But most importantly, in my opinion, it is a systems issue. We have people and families that want to get well, and our system does not reflect their needs. And so when we look at the focus, we have an acute system. It serves the needs of managed care organizations. It serves the needs of acute treatment providers, but it does not serve the needs of people within this continuum. We have a lot of inertia and territoriality. I'm not sure if that's even a word, but I don't know how else to say it. My hope is that we can try to circumvent some of these things to get what we know into practice. So when Ms. McDade shares, Paratherapeutics has the Resetto app, there is no reason that these should not be implemented. And when we look at things that people are calling innovation like telehealth has been around for 40 years. Finally, we are seeing widespread adoption in this pandemic, not because of a sort of a desire to meet the needs of suffering individuals or families, but because healthcare as a whole is forced into it. We also see disintegration, as we saw in the presentation from DHS. Our largest behavioral health provider are our county jails. And so as YourPath and Pathfinder and some of the collaborative efforts that we are trying to get started with the University of Minnesota and Hennepin Healthcare is to bring together county jails and these holistic service providers. We also have inconsistency and ideological rigidity, and without a real focus on systemic recovery-oriented systems of care, we don't see referrals within these systems. We see discontinuations and repeat episodes of care. In Minnesota, we have phenomenal plans. We have the DHS reform plan from 2017, and we also have some really wonderful document produced by Jama Chara. She came in to do some consultation around recovery orientation. Without operationalizing these cultural shifts and this movement away from siloed acute care, we're going to recreate these same care models. And really what that looks like in my estimation is we have 400 treatment providers and we have 9 recovery community organizations. So when we have, Carol and her husband has started a really wonderful recovery community organization in their region, we have people that are doing the same things. In my humble opinion, I don't have any affiliation besides working on their behalf. This is the answer to our workforce issue. This is our answer to our continuum issue. And this is our answer to really systemic involvement between these pieces. One last thing, just if we are able to refocus on the DHS 2017 reform document, really anchor ourselves in the work that has already been done, and also try to bring private industry technological advancements to bear on this issue, I think we have the ability to move back into the lead as a demonstration of a system of care in Minnesota. If we take the CCBHC model that we heard about, and we try to not necessarily think of it just as a location, but what do we do to wrap vocational services, behavioral health, primary care? We have those systems in Minnesota. Our goal, in my opinion, is to take these technology solutions and tie them all together. And with that, I will stop yapping.
Well, yeah, that's a remarkable challenge, and I see, not to undo it, I minimize it, just a ray of hope here. So, let's do Mr. Wellstone, and welcome to the committee. I'm not sure you've been before us before, so welcome.
There
you are. Hi.
Thank you very much, Chair Abler, Senator Hoffman, and distinguished members. It looks like I may have about 5 minutes before we're done. Is that correct? Anyway, I'm going to make that assumption, and I'm going to start.
You take 5 minutes, and then we're going to do a little talking. So.
Okay, so I'm going to shorten up my my presentation here. So I started working on mental health and addiction issues on the parity bill, the federal parity bill named after my father's, the Wellstone Diminishing Mental Health Addiction Equity Act. Worked on that for several years before that was affordable housing developer. Moved back to Minnesota, put the two things together and started some women's sober housing. Started with one house and ended up with 5 homes, and saw the need to really connect folks that were in our houses and that were in recovery. And so met up with some people that had real tech backgrounds, had worked for Google, HBO, big projects, but weren't fulfilled in what they were doing. I talked about wanting to work and help as many people as possible in this field of addiction, mental health and addiction. So we came together, formed a team, and with the premise that connection is the opposite of addiction, we built 2 tools. We engaged academia, we engaged treatment centers, we engaged professionals on all different levels, and came up with 2 tools for folks. One is called Pathfinder Companion for people in recovery or who are on that recovery path. It connects them to each other, peer-to-peer, on an app, chat app. It connects them to resources at their fingertips, and it keeps them connected to clinicians. We also developed Pathfinder Bridge, which is the clinical tool, desktop, that the clinicians use to stay connected with their members or patients. Again, it's real-time communication, gives the ability to prioritize short-term who may need the most needs, who has the most needs and needs to be reached out to first, and gives the ability to stay in touch with the person for a longer period of time and start to look at measurable long-term outcomes. We had heard from treatment centers that oftentimes they don't know what happens to their folks after they leave. They don't stay in touch with them, oftentimes pick up the phone and hope that they answer. We heard that they really don't have the ability to provide some measurable outcomes, and that prioritizing who within their system needs the most care was tough. So let me walk you through really briefly, Chair, Pathfinder Companion. It is a chat app. It's on your phone. Once you're in a group, let's say it's an IOP, you're in, let's say, a group of 15 people, you have 15 people immediately that you have a peer-to-peer connection with right away. You are connected to resources. We've got resources like, where do I find a job? How do I get my license back if I had a DWI? Where's a local food shelf? Where can I find meetings? Those are at your fingertips. We curate those on every couple of weeks. You can save those in the app and you can share those with others. Zoom is embedded. So for instance, if you have a meeting and somebody that's in your, that chats you and says, hey, where's the next meeting? You can say, here it is virtually, and they're connected on their app. We have videos. We thought videos was hugely important, especially in this time of COVID, to give people hope. These are videos, other people like yourselves who are walking that walk. We curated those. 2 pieces. You can look at those, and we know you're stuck inside oftentimes, and you can also tell your story, which is very powerful in recovery. You can do it in a video form, a written form, or an oral form. On our tech side, our guys had built games, gamification to keep people engaged. So we've got things like badges and real-time rewards, basically incentivizing you to do things that promote your recovery within the app. And then we have check-ins, which is kind of at the guts of it. People check in, either cursory, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm okay. You can dig down deeper. I'm worried, I'm anxious. On the emotional side, you use emojis to do this, and you can go to one other screen and talk about how you're feeling physically. You have your own dashboard, which allows you to track your own check-ins. In our beta project that we just finished up, for instance, one thing that we saw was there was a person suffering co-occurring disorders, bipolar disorder and SUD. He, on his own personal dashboard, was able to look at these check-ins, which are color-coded, green meaning a positive check-in, gradiating down to red meaning a negative. And when he was with his personal care physician, who was asking him questions about the bipolar, was able to go back and sort of track his own thing by time of day, day of week, and provide some real information as they started to look at his meds. And so that, in a nutshell, I won't go further, is Pathfinder Companion. It's on your phone. It's you get iOS or Android. And then Pathfinder Bridge The tool that we built for the clinicians allows them to stay in touch with the patient or client on the app real time. Before this happened, they didn't do this because they didn't want to use their own personal devices, right? So now you've got a way to immediately contact someone. You've got a way to check into those check-ins, to look at it, take a 10,000 foot view like Senator Hoffman said, and see who may need priority. Maybe it's that they didn't check in, or maybe it's that they were checking in negatively. In the beta, again, one thing that we found was the group that we were beta with was able to predict a relapse. Someone had checked in for 2 weeks in a row, relatively good. Didn't check in for 3 days. Day 4 checked in with 4 negative check-ins. Counselor was able to reach out immediately, figured out that person had relapsed, and was able to keep them back in that program. And I know I'm running short on time, but one other anecdote was a person had an accident, a motorcycle accident, had come into his group, had met his counselor, had met his group of folks, but now was in the hospital for 2 weeks. This was the lifeline to stay connected to folks. And so connection is the opposite of addiction. The tool also provides accountability, which we think is important, accountability to oneself, accountability to others walking that walk, and accountability to your clinician. Last point I'm going to make is the tool is portable. We know that the longer you are touched by somebody in your recovery, somebody who's trying to help you in that recovery journey, the better your chances of success are. This is a tool in your tool belt that you can take with you. If you start in one treatment center and then you move on and you're working with an RCO, or you're just doing peer-to-peer, you have this tool. It's in your tool belt, and you're still connected to whoever you may have started with. So if you need to get back, you need help, you immediately can do it at your fingertips, and people are able to look long-term about how you're doing and look at some of these measurable outcomes. I'm going to stop there because I think I've overdone my time.
Yeah. Well, actually, Mr. Wellstone, it was good time, and I knew your dad and had a lot of respect for him. So you've got some of the same fire inside of you, and just talking to Senator Hoffman on the side, that we know some people that if they would have had some of these things, that they'd still be here. And that's compelling to me. And actually, I want to point out, I don't know if you all noticed, you all said the same thing. Got all these circles, and how do you get people to not, here's the people we serve one, how do you get them not to fall off the page? And so part of my role here as the chair is to take 9 senators and empower them to go interact with, well, the world in Minnesota and try to improve on things. And I have a lot of regard for the department, and I'm particularly pleased that Mr. Fleissner is there and Ms. Singh. And so just, we're going to discuss this a little bit, but I've asked Senator Hoffman if he would kind of lead our effort in this committee to kind of see what we can sort in of these items, and to bring forward at least a pilot project by the time we get into March. So Senator Hoffman, it's been your presentation. You get to go first, and then we'll have just a few minutes for members that want to comment. And Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. You know, when Mr. Fleissner, showed out, he talked about what are the tools that are needed, right? And one of it was that support network, going back to that relationship side and being honest. First of all, thank you, department, for being really honest about, yeah, we have an enriched system. We have more substance abuse counselors per capita than any other state in the nation, right? But yet you successfully identified some of the gaps that we know are within our system, and now let's try to fix those gaps. And I was truly inspired, Mr. Chair. One of the 10 guiding principles that SAMHSA has put out to the states, right, our federal oversight, the very first principle that they have for recovery is hope, right? Number one is hope. And so when Mr. Wellstone brought that up, I mean, this is what it's about, hope. Second one, person driven. And I like to hear Mr. Fleissner saying, look, we've moved from our institutional type settings to now we're moving to that person-centered approach, right? And one of the guiding principles in person-driven, many pathways, one size doesn't fit all, holistic peer support, the relational side, the addressing of the trauma, which is some underlying facts that I think are important for people to understand. And then we do this with our strength and responsibilities. But I'm liking how you've had this conversation, Mr. Chair, and absolutely gets us to driving to this is real reform, and this is what we're about. So in the words of Jimmy Ramstead, whose best friend was Paul Wellstone. Rammer used to say, leave your ego in the hallway, Hoffman. This is about the outcomes that you want for people. And I've never, ever forgotten that. And I will repeat that every time. And then one more thing for you, Mr. Chair. Notice the conversation when they said it all has to be done collaboratively. I started to smile because for years I've been saying all about the coordinated, comprehensive, continued, and collaborative care. So thank you for having this.
And you couldn't have said it better. Other comments from members? We have a couple minutes. I'm going to run just a couple minutes late. This is just that important, and I'm not willing to minimize the effect of today's hearing here. So otherwise, awesome thoughts, and can go home or something. I haven't talked to Mr. Fleissner personally, so I'm not going to ask him any questions that'll take him off guard. But I have a feeling, and Ms. McDade probably knows the answer to this. So historically, we probably 20 to 30% effective. We do another reform package. Here it is, the new reform package, and it's all there. And we do reform, and it's 20 to 30%. And we have a new program. Hey, it's going to be up. It's going to be awesome. You got all these things, and it's 20 to 30%. And so we all know people that have been through 15 cycles of an inpatient program for any amount of time, and they, and is it housing issues or whatever? And so I think with the crew that's at DHS and Senator Hoffman and a member or two, I'm going to ask if they want to join into this effort, or if you want to talk to me about joining the effort. I think that we have a little bit of time here. The governor's got their budget out, and we'll see if there's anything interesting there that we want to incorporate. But I think that the strength of our system of government in this state is we bring 67 people as senators and 134 as House members from everywhere. And we have a little time on our hands. We have a focus of what we want to do, and we take the administration's, the executive branch's work, which belongs to all of us, bring in experts like those we've heard today, and try to shift it a little bit as we make a proposal. And if the department administration accept it, that's the new resultant thing, just a little tweak. I have a feeling you don't tear it all down, but I think there's some pieces to fill in, and that's my thinking. So I can quit there. Anybody else want to say anything else before I release this for the day? Mr. Fleissner, do you want to comment at all? I'll give you the last word if you want, but you don't have to. If it's
Chair Abler, dangerous thing when you give me the last word, but thank you, members.
No, it's not, because you're just that good. So you come.
I know. I just wanted to say thank you. I think this is an outstanding conversation. As we think about this as a state of Minnesota, there's tremendous potential to do better. And I'm encouraged by today's conversation, and hopeful that DHS can be a strong cog and a part of creating that stronger system. So thank you for your time today.
And thank you. Let me just create some interest in the industry. I said this in 2011, and I'll be saying it again as we were looking at money issues. It's not my job to protect one of the providers or a vendor, anybody, anywhere. It's my job. It's our job to deal with the clients who need what we have to offer and help them be successful and actually survive the challenges of their particular challenge, that they can live through it, frankly, and there'll be no more of these tragic stories. So with that being said, we need a whole lot of providers, but it has to be done well. And so if you're a dinosaur provider, they're in museums, and we can look back at how that meant. And they had a good little world there, eating each other and whatever they did. But nobody wants to be a dinosaur anymore. They want to be, I don't know what they want to be, but they don't want to be a dinosaur. They want to be some futuristic Jetsons, I don't know, whatever thing. But so we need to move our system forward and make sure that people survive, and all the good intent of all the providers. We need to capture that and help them move to where the people get 40, 50, 60, 70% success rates. And so we can put our effort into those 30 who are just the most challenging, not into the 70. So that's my challenge, and the phone might ring. But when we're a little short of money, when there's a crisis time, like a pandemic that reveals the gaps, when a budget shortfall reveals clarity of values, what we're getting for our money, this is the time to do that in a very kind way. And so providers join us, get a hold of Senator Hoffman. Now your phone will ring off the hook. And another member or two from this committee, and in a month or so, we'll have a check-in to see how that's going. And Mr. Wellstone, Ms. McQuaid, Ms. Singh, Ms. Fleissner, and Mr. Hanson, I hope you're all part of that dialogue. So I think I'll quit there while we're ahead. I don't see any hands. Thanks very much for just, I think, a remarkable day. We talked about trying to make sure we do our numbers well, so we just pay the right amount of people and try to help people that have fallen through the crack and got a chance to work. And now how about the people that want to live through all this and the people that want to serve them? What an opportunity we all have. So thanks. With that, we're adjourned. Thanks very much.